Gender mainstreaming. Differences, inequalities, and gender dimension. Throughout history, the biological differences between men and women have led to differences in terms of roles and status, termed gender differences. Sex-disaggregated statistics show that these differences are still reflected in many areas. For example, at the economic level, where the rate of employment for women is lower than for men. Women tend to work more in part-time positions, and their incomes are generally lower. In terms of mobility, women's journeys are more fragmented, and men tend to use the car more, while women favor public transportation. In the domain of justice, men are less likely to be given custody of children and form the core of the prison population. There are differences in terms of health, since women are more likely to suffer from heart disease than men, and men die more often in a road traffic accident and commit suicide more often. These differences also exist in numerous other areas, such as safety, poverty, pensions, education, and training, and so on. A difference between men and women is considered a problem in terms of equality when it limits access by women or men to resources such as income, work, responsibilities, health, safety, training and education, mobility, time, and so on. An area where access to resources by women or men is very different presents a gender dimension. Different approaches in the domain of the equality of women and men. Let's start with the fact that there are far fewer female entrepreneurs than male. In entrepreneurship, an initial approach aiming to improve the equality of women and men is to prohibit discrimination on grounds of sex. For example, refusing to grant a loan based on the applicant's sex. A second approach consists in implementing specific equality-related policies by providing training or grants specifically for women. Gender mainstreaming is a third approach. It involves taking into account the situational differences existing between men and women at the time of public policy making. Hence, in the framework of an entrepreneurship support program, the criteria that are used should ideally also enable small amounts to also be allocated in areas of activity with lower added value and to small enterprises. The program will be more likely to be relevant for a wide audience, including women, and this will strengthen its effectiveness. Gender mainstreaming focuses on inequalities faced by both women and men. Integrating the gender dimension into a policy. A concrete example. In the legislative period 2014 to 2019, the government decided to reform marriage law. At the request of the Minister of Justice, an expert opinion relating to the financial consequences of relationship breakdowns was requested. The opinion highlighted a great deal of data relating to the differences between men and women as regards employment rate, part-time work, leave for specific purposes, the pay gap, and time devoted to household tasks. These differences, derived from the traditional roles of men and women in households, have implications for women's economic independence in terms of often finding themselves in greater financial difficulty after separations. Based on this expert opinion and its recommendations, those responsible for the reform paid particular attention to protection of the financially weaker spouse. When a marriage contract is concluded, the notary has an important duty to provide information about the risks connected with the regime governing division of matrimonial assets. He or she must emphasize the possibility of providing for the sharing of the income acquired during the marriage, or the possibility of providing for a judicial correction for greater equity. Adjustments were also made to the standard legal regime. For self-employed people, for example, it will no longer be possible to remove legally shared professional income via a company. This marriage law reform was therefore established taking account of the situational differences between men and women. Its provisions give more protection to spouses who are vulnerable in economic terms. Summary. In order to apply gender mainstreaming, in other words, in order to incorporate the gender dimension in a public policy, we need to know if there are situational differences between men and women in the area concerned. Use of gender-specific statistics is often crucial. If differences exist, we need to ask whether these differences limit the access of women or men to certain resources and therefore constitute inequalities. Next, we need to make the policy, taking account of its impact on the situation of women and of men in terms of access to resources. For more information, visit our website www.iefh.belgium.be.